So there seems to be a lot of confusion out there about modes, and there's just not a lot of real good information that I've found that explain what the different modes are. So today we're going to dive into each and every mode, and I'm going to show you how they relate to the major and the minor scale. So let's dive in and figure this out. So to start with, we're going to be doing this in the key of C. And the reason I'm going to pick C to do this in is that C has no sharps and no flats. So as we go through, say, the minor scale and these different modes, by saying I'm going to flat something or make something sharp, it'll just be easier to visually see if we do this in the key of C. So I'm going to come up here, and in the key of C, if I play this pattern, I get the C major scale. And we can actually number this. So if I think of C as being my 1, D would be my 2, E would be my 3, F4, G5, A6, B7, and when I get to my C note, that would start back over with 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you're like a lot of people, you play not necessarily by notes around the guitar in different keys, you think in patterns. So this is a neat, easy pattern to learn. And so if we just take this pattern, we can move it around the guitar neck to sort of change keys if we want to play modes in different keys. But if I'm playing my major scale, that is one of my modes. This is the Ionian mode. So if you know how to play a major scale pattern anywhere on the neck, you already conquered one of the modes. If you take this same scale pattern though, and I've mentioned this before, and you move it 3 frets up, only I'm going to be ending on this C note, so that's going to be my 1. I now get the minor scale. So if I take any major scale pattern and I move it 3 frets up, I now get the minor scale pattern of that same key. So in this case, I was in C. I come up here. I play the same scale pattern, and now I get C minor. And C minor scale is the same as the Aeolian mode. So if you know a major scale pattern anywhere, that would be your Ionian mode. You move that scale pattern 3 frets up, and now you get the Aeolian mode or the minor scale. So the Aeolian mode or minor scale, remember these are the same exact thing. It flats the third, so instead of playing a major third, we're going to move it this way, 1 fret. That would make it flat. So we have a flatted third, we have a flatted 6th note, and we have a flatted 7th note. So if you flat the 3rd, flat the 6th, and flat the 7th, you turn an Ionian mode into a minor scale or Aeolian mode. So these are the 2 main modes that most people play in, is the major scale Ionian and the minor scale Aeolian. So the other ones are really just variations off these 2. Now, one mode that a lot of people talk about quite often and a lot of people use is the Dorian mode. Now remember, we came up here and we played this pattern and we got the minor scale or the Aeolian mode. That's where I had a flatted 3rd, a flatted 6th, and a flatted 7th. Well, the only difference between a Dorian mode and the minor scale or Aeolian mode is I'm still going to have a flatted 3rd, but I'm going to have a major 6th. So I'm not going to flat the 6th, but I am going to flat the 7th. So now I've got a flatted 3rd and a flatted 7th. So from the major scale, I flat the 3rd and I flat the 7th. But everything else stays the same. So you're really just changing one note to go from the Aeolian mode or the minor scale to the Dorian mode. You're just not flatting the 6th. You're making it a major 6th. Now, why would you want to do that? And there's a couple of reasons. So if you're playing, say, in the key of C and you go to a D chord or an A chord or something that would have, an A note in it, then you would want to use that regular A note, that major A, instead of an A flat. So there are instances where you might want to use Dorian instead of using the minor scale. But really, if you think about it, you're just changing, that one note from being the minor scale to being the Dorian scale. So that's really the only difference between these two. So your Phrygian mode is very similar to your minor scale or your Aeolian mode. Remember, in the Aeolian mode or your minor scale, we had a major second, flatted third, we had a major fourth, major fifth, we flatted the sixth, and flatted the seventh. In the Phrygian mode, we're going to take that major second and we're going to make it a flatted second. Now, all honesty, true disclosure, this flatted second just doesn't sound, very good. It clashes. So there's a couple of modes that use this flatted second, and they typically don't sound very good. The rest of it is the same as the minor scale, but just be careful on when you use that flatted second because it doesn't always sound good. So just word to the wise, try it out if you want. I don't tend to use Phrygian very much because that flatted second is just an awkward note. It's an awkward sound in the scale. The next scale on the list is the Lydian mode, and we can come back down to our major scale. The only difference between the major scale and the Lydian mode is instead of playing this fourth, we're going to make it sharp. And this note is kind of interesting because this is your blue note. So if we were to come up here to this pattern and play our minor pentatonic scale, if we add this sharped fourth or flatted fifth, however you want to think about it, that is our blue note, and it turns our minor pentatonic scale into our minor blues scale, or a lot of people just call this the blues scale. So in your Lydian mode, all you're doing is adding this blue note to the major scale. So that is the only difference between the Ionian or the major scale and your Lydian mode, is you're just taking that fourth and changing it 1/2 step up to make it your blue note. The Mixolydian is very similar to the Lydian in that we're still going to use this major scale, but once again, we're only going to change one note. We're going to take this seventh, and instead of being a major seventh, we're going to flat it. So it's still the major scale, but with a flatted seventh. So that flatted seventh is sort of borrowed from that minor scale. But other than that, it's the same as the Ionian mode. So we're just flatting the seventh note, and now we get the Mixolydian scale. The next scale that you would run into if you were looking at a list is the Aeolian mode, and we've already talked about the Aeolian mode. The Aeolian mode is simply your minor scale. So, like I said, if you know the major scale pattern, any major scale pattern, you move it 3 frets up, and now you've got the Aeolian mode or your minor scale. So that's an easy enough one to remember. So last and certainly least, because it's the least used mode of all because it just sounds the worst, is the Locrian mode. And once again, we can think around this minor pentatonic scale or your Aeolian mode. And just like in the Phrygian, we're going to flat this second. We're going to have a flatted third, a major fourth, but now we're going to flat that fifth so we get that blue note, flat the sixth, and flat the seventh. But all of those flats in there, and remember I've already mentioned the flatted second, which doesn't necessarily sound very good, and you flat all of these other notes and add that major fourth in there, it just adds for a really strange combination of notes that generally don't sound very good. If you, play around with it, you might find it useful in some way. Most people tend to stay away from this mode, but that's the notes inside of this mode. I really do hope this helps, and I hope it simplifies modes for you a little bit. Like I said, if you know your major scale and you know your minor scale, you already know two of the modes. The other modes are simply variations, if you want to think of them that way, between the major and the minor scale, or adding that blue note, you know, or a combination of these two scales. Now, if you want to go deeper into modes and you want a video on, you know, sort of where modes originate from, you know, where they're getting these modal ideas, they're coming from major scale patterns of other keys, and it can get a little bit down in the weeds and confusing, but I'd be glad to make a video for you if that's what you want. Just let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I really do hope this helps, and as always, if you need something, just reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you.